on your side. This is WHAS 11 News.
When your flagship program is facing a death penalty, it's time for you to move on.
And right now tonight at 5 o'clock is U of L Athletic Director Tom Jurich about to lose his job next. Majority of the coaches banding together, sending a letter to the interim president and the Kentucky governor. We'll have the latest on the continuing fallout of the FBI investigation.
Plus, all new here at 5, we're taking you inside the search for Kentucky lawyer and fugitive Eric Kahn. The new documents obtained by the I-Team that lays out an elaborate plan of escape.
And we love Chuck. Lost him way too young. 8 years after his death, we're continuing the legacy of Chuck Olmstead, our great friend who died from a brain aneurysm. Chuck's wife Candy is here with the annual Chuck Olmstead Memorial Fund, raising money for free brain scans. Call us 571-2345, 866-885-1848. But first here tonight, Tom Jurich's legacy is heralded in a new letter from several of the coaches he hired. Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Proffitt.
And I'm Kayla Moody in for Rachel Platt. 15 of the school's head coaches, from volleyball to football, even the new men's head basketball coach, signed that letter of support.
It comes as the Board of Trustees will meet tomorrow about the future of the athletic director. WHAS 11's Tabney Dozier joins us more on that letter and who signed it. Tabney?
Well, it is a one-page letter, Doug and Kayla, that 15 of the 20-plus.
Chris, thank you. The teen convicted of shooting a student at Fern Creek High School in September 2014 will remain in prison. A judge last week denied 19-year-old Andre Banks' request for shock probation. You may recall Banks' probation was revoked earlier this year after prosecutors say he was found in possession of a handgun while on probation. Tonight, he remains in prison, serving an 18-year sentence. The Eastern Kentucky lawyer who swindled $500 million in Social Security money from many of you was part of an elaborate plan to escape being sentenced. Eric Kahn is now charged along with a former employee in new documents obtained by the 11 News I-Team. Derek Rose has those new documents and information. And Derek, he is still at large. Do they have any idea where he may be?
At this point, if they are specifying, they're not specifying publicly. The last time we saw Eric Kahn's name and story surface in headlines when the FBI sent us these surveillance images from a Walmart in New Mexico. Now, these newly unsealed indictments, we are learning how the FBI believes Kahn got from Eastern Kentucky to the southwestern part.
Derek, thank you. Some major revelations there. Well, brain aneurysms are known as the silent killer, causing nearly 500,000 deaths around the world each year. We're working to help promote awareness to the signs of aneurysms and stroke. An aneurysm happens when an artery's wall weakens and causes an abnormally large bulge that can rupture and cause internal bleeding. Many times there are no obvious symptoms until it's too late. But if you have dilated pupils, changes in vision or pain behind the eye, and weakness, numbness, or paralysis on one side of the face, get to a doctor right away. Chuck Olmstead, a longtime WHAS 11 reporter, suddenly died from an aneurysm in 2009. So tonight, we're helping raise money for his memorial fund until 6:30 right here on air. And Doug is in our other studio to tell us more. Doug, how are things going over there?
It's going really well, Kayla. Thank you so much. About $1,000 raised so far. 571-2345, 866-885-1848. You know, I loved Chuck. He was a towering figure, about 6 feet tall.
Just into our newsroom, Rick Pitino has filed a lawsuit against Adidas. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Kayla Moody in for Rachel Platt.
And I'm Doug Proffitt. The story continues to widen at this very hour. Pitino is now claiming damages caused by the apparel company's dealings with recruits. This comes as 15 of the school's 21 head coaches, including interim coach David Padgett, signed a letter to Dr. Postal and the governor announcing their support, their gratitude for athletic director Tom Jurich. They highlighted the AD's accomplishments and stressed the importance of his work. It was a one-page letter that carried plenty of weight. Will this support, along with several community members' show of support as well, be enough to convince the trustees? Well, joining us live to talk about all that is the Courier-Journal's beat reporter for U of L, Jeff Greer. Joined us here before. We ought to talk about the breaking news. He goes after a company that until yesterday was paying him a pretty substantial personal services contract and had announced a big deal with the university. Is there a disconnect here? What's going on, do you think, with this?
Well, I think what we're seeing is Rick Pitino is trying to basically start firing at everybody. I mean, I think the lawsuit for U of L will be coming soon, I would think, for breach of contract. And we're seeing Adidas is now in the crosshairs for them.
And we have a copy of that lawsuit right here. Certainly not mincing words. It says Pitino had nothing to do with Adidas' outrageous, wrongful, and illegal conspiracy. That's the wording from that lawsuit right there.
Yeah, they're basically arguing in this lawsuit that Adidas and these wrong actors, these bad actors, set him up, basically, is how I read that in the 30 seconds that we had to scan it here.
And of course, but the FBI, we're saying is, we're hearing reports, of course, and Steve Pence confirmed it yesterday that Rick Pitino is coach too. That he made his whole defense at U of L yesterday as coach too. I'm sure the viewers are sitting and wonder, well, wait a second, isn't he being accused of being a part of the conspiracy?
Yeah, the one thing that's sort of confusing about the Coach 2 stuff in the complaint is that there's really it's sort of circumstantial evidence around Coach 2 and whether or not there was any specific wrongdoing with him. They kind of circle around him without truly pointing to anything specifically that he did wrong. It just looks bad, I guess, is the way, it would seem to most people. But I think right now they're hoping that they can kind of use that innuendo in the FBI complaint to get as much out of this situation as they can before the bad news keeps coming, I guess.
Tomorrow the focus switches to Tom Jurich. What are his chances for keeping his position? He has certainly probably more support, more public support than Rick Pitino did.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is a little bit muddier than Rick Pitino. I think first and foremost, he understands, how to work this community. He's gotten these big name donors to come out in support of him. But you don't mess with David Grissom. At least that's what I've been told, the chairman of the Board of Trustees. And so it seems like they're probably in Grissom's corner. We've seen a lot of jostling. One thing to maybe keep an eye on tomorrow is what if they just don't make any decisions tomorrow and delay it, then this thing will drag on longer.
Do you expect Tom Jurich to come in and make an impassioned plea for his job? He has been very emotional in many news conferences in the past when he brought Bobby Petrino back defending Rick Pitino. Do you think he thinks, if I could do it myself, I'll show up?
I wonder if he's a little too proud for that. I wonder if he's not going to be perceived as sort of like, kind of grousing for his job. I think he may kind of let the arguments that have been made through the media, through some of the media outlets that are closely tied with him, and some of the people who back him have kind of made the arguments for him. So he may not even show up. Maybe his lawyers will be there. We'll see.
All right. Any big articles coming out? Do you want to?
There's always something. Just go to courierjournal.com. Every single day there is something, if not, a bunch of stuff that you can read.
All right.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Guys.
Continue right now at 5.
On your side, this is WHAS 11 News.
Today, the Board of Trustees voted to terminate with cause the employment of our athletic director. We want to thank Tom for his many years of service and contributions to the University of Louisville.
U of L president just moments ago, and right now at 5, the man who built the U of L athletic department into a national powerhouse at U of L is fired with cause. The vote 10-3, including a yes vote from the man whose name is on the football stadium, John Schnatter. And it is breaking news late today. His 20th year anniversary on the job as the Cardinal athletic director is this Saturday. Tonight, Tom Jurich no longer with U of L. Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Proffitt.
And I'm Kayla Moody. Rachel Platt has the night off. Jurich had the support of several head coaches and the support of some higher profile community members. But in the end, it came down to what the trustees who decided to start over.
The vote, which we showed you live here on WHAS 11, came down just about at 4:30. Derek Rose has been getting reaction. He's been there all day long waiting outside, and more on why Jurich really never had a chance. Derek, his attorneys were in and out of that meeting very quickly.
They sure did. They were in and out of this meeting within about 10 minutes.
All right, thanks, Derek. I'll get it back to you there. And I'm hearing that a settlement with Tom Jurich could range anywhere between $15 and $20 million. Of course, they offered him some settlement deals this morning, and he rejected them.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the board elected to fire him with cause today, because a settlement could not be reached. And I think in order to fire him, I feel like they had to do it with cause. Now,
let's
the
talk
matter
about
of with cause, it means you have a legitimate reason in order to fire somebody, so you do not have to pay any kind of a settlement. There's been a lot of speculation on what kind of with cause that was. I mean, several weeks ago, interim president Greg Postal was asked, was Tom Jurich asked to fire Rick Pitino, and did he refuse? And Postal says, I did not ask Tom Jurich to fire Rick Pitino.
The reason why he's asked that is we've been told that about a year ago, last summer, or in the summertime, the athletic director in Postal had a meeting in a local restaurant, and this was after the NCAA came out with its information, and asked him to fire Rick Pitino, and Jurich steadfastly refused. He's always supported Rick Pitino and wouldn't do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But to be quite honest, when Postal came out after today's vote and announced the firing of Tom Jurich, but said that he couldn't discuss it because of legal matters, I mean, I think that Louisville is certainly preparing for a legal fight on what they or what they will not owe Tom Jurich in the end.
Well, I think it's important to note that Tom Jurich was never named in the allegations that came out from breaking cardinal rules. He was also never named in that FBI investigation. So many people, that has left many people to think that, his biggest crime, so to speak, was just, being an ironclad supporter of Rick Pitino.
No, absolutely.
Well, that and the fact that his relations with the interim president have not been good, been chilly. There's been a firewall between athletics and the university office and the president's office. That goes back to Jim Ramsey and David Grissom. Also, the chairman of the board wants to start clean. He believes you need a fresh start.
No, I think, and I've used this analogy a few times describing what the board may be thinking. When your house burns down, if your house is on fire, you don't take piece of burnt wood and start building the house with burnt wood. And it seems like right now the Board of Trustees, and everybody involved, they want to start completely fresh, completely clean, and that's what maybe we're looking at now. Vince Tyree, who is the U of L acting athletics director at the moment, was interviewed, and our Robert Bradfield was in that interview, and just some cliff notes of what he said. He understands that the fans are emotional about this decision that is today, and he says it's his job to soothe the situation, and move the program forward. He thanked Tom Jurich for his services. I mean, one of the things is we may be talking about the firing of Tom Jurich today, but you cannot, overshadow anything that he's already done here with the university, what he did with the athletics department, building up athletics to what it is today. Tyree also said he feels like the leadership in place right now at Louisville does support athletics and that it will not be de-emphasized. He feels great with the relationship that he has with the current coaches on staff right now. And, obviously a lot of them, 15 just signed a letter just the other day supporting Tom Jurich. He feels like that relationship is great moving forward, and that will continue to be great moving forward.
Now, we know that Tom Jurich's son, Mark Jurich, wasn't a part of today's action, that he's still employed by U of L, but awkward situation now?
Probably an awkward situation. I think only time will tell to see how that plays out. Obviously, I think for a lot of people into that athletics department, they were all hired by Tom Jurich. They're all very loyal to Tom Jurich. It'll be interesting to see how a lot of that stuff plays out in the future, to see if they want to stick around and be a part of what is the new movement, so to speak.
Well, and his son's so instrumental in the expansion of Papa John's Cardinal Stadium, so it will be interesting.
He's become a big fundraiser in that department with that, the Thornton's athletic complex, Lynn Stadium. He was a big part in raising funds for that as well.
So you look at the last-minute effort today. So we were told by a source close to Tom Jurich that it even started this morning, that Jurich also got another settlement offer this morning. Last night on 11 at 11, we reported that he would be fired today based on source close to Tom Jurich, and that it would be with cause. That happened today, and then we learned that they made a last-minute effort. He rejected that, and then the attorneys for Tom Jurich are in that meeting 9 minutes. They've even said they didn't know if the board even heard what they said.
Because they made a presentation and they were asked 0 questions in 9 minutes. I mean, Rick Pitino's representatives were in there for much longer, and they had slides, they had text messages, they had all this evidence, and they were never asked a question. It definitely seems like the Board of Trustees, they wanted to make quick work of this, and it seems like they've done just that.
All right. Well, speaking of Rick Pitino, we have more on that. He is giving his first interview since his firing on Monday of this week. Again, he was fired Monday. It seems like it's been a long week already, but so much has happened in just a few days. You'll have to stay up late tonight to watch Jay Billis's discussion with the former U of L coach. It's going to air at midnight on ESPN.
That's right. Airing at midnight, however, we did get a preview. Take a look.
I was asked 2 questions. I said, and I want you to ask me if any other recruits in my tenure were ever given anything. And he said, that's not what we're here for. We're here for, did you have any knowledge of the Bowen family getting any money? Did you have any knowledge of an Adidas transaction? And I answered absolutely not on both questions and passed the lie detector test.
And again, that airs at midnight tonight on ESPN.
And our coverage is going to continue on this developing story at 5:30. ESPN host Bob Valvano, who has had some run-ins with Tom Jurich, is going to be back with us to share his perspective on the latest updates. He is the play-by-play, the color analyst for U of L broadcasts as well, along with Paul Rogers on radio, and he is the ESPN 680 host. He'll be joining us live here in just a few minutes.
And moving on to other news now, we now have a taste of what's to come for pension reform in Kentucky. Governor Matt Bevin outlined the deal he described as keeping the promises. WHAS 11's political editor Chris Williams is just back from Frankfurt with a look at what we've learned. Chris?
Kayla, no changes for current retirees, no changes for state employees.
It's been a staple in downtown Louisville for more than half a century, but today its doors are closing.
Well, we're talking about Freddy's here. It's on Broadway downtown. It's actually gotten great reviews over the years. And today, the staff at Freddy's 220 Bar are moving out. But the bar says it's only temporary. Dennis Ting was there as they packed up shop, learning more about why they're moving and some of the memories in this building.
Freddy's has sat at this location on East Broadway for the past 57 years.
Now, one of Louisville's historic homes is no more. The Codes and Regulations Department says they could not save the Willis Cole home we told you about. This is in the 2300 block of Muhammad Ali, despite the fact that it was deemed historic. The home had not been kept up, and bricks had been falling from the top of the home since last week. The former owner, Willis Cole, lived there from 1887 to 1950. He was the founder of Louisville's African-American newspaper. It was called the Louisville Leader, and it is archived by U of L. Cole was also an active civil rights advocate here in Louisville.
And out of your first alert, Storm Team forecast just a beautiful day out there today. You step outside, it doesn't feel like fall in the afternoons. In the morning, though, it's a little brisk.
Look at this. Ben Pine, you're talking about colors already changing in the leaves.
A little bit here. We got this photo tweeted to me, a little aerial view with a drone over the Joe Smith farm. And you can see just we should have mostly clear sky. And you can see 20 to 30 meteors or shooting stars per hour.
All right, Ben, thank you. And this just in, the continuing story, Tom Jurich fired by the University of Louisville shortly after 4:30 today. He has now released a statement through his attorneys and the local PR firm, Boxcar PR. He said that they are disheartened. They believe the vote to terminate his contract was done in haste with inaccurate information that should have no bearing on his continuing employment. He wants to thank everybody in the city of Louisville and the staff at U of L for all of their support. But this is the final line in this, Kayla. Tom has instructed us, the attorneys, to vigorously defend his rights and reputation under his long-standing contract with the University of Louisville. Lawsuits are coming.
Absolutely. You know, and this all comes on the heels of a letter of support, which was just one element of many, really, of people publicly supporting Tom Jurich ahead of today's decision, some of those being head coaches at the University of Louisville. Well, just minutes ago, our reporters who are at the University of Louisville campus just interviewed acting athletic director Vince Tyree, who had this to say.
I know there's going to be emotion for the fans. That's the beauty of this. They are passionate fans. I mean, it's one of the things that's moved this program forward so long as having so many dedicated, passionate fans. And I recognize that they're going to be out there and there's going to be negative comments and there's going to be division. But my role is to, unify this as best I can, not just inside the athletic department, but with the university and the foundation.
All right, 13 U of L board members today took a vote. The vote to remove Jurich was 10-3, including a yes vote from the man who has his name on the football stadium, Papa John Schnatter, voting to remove Tom Jurich today. Again, the first statement coming out, a letter just thanking everybody, but he also is saying that they're going to fight for his contract. And he celebrates would celebrate his 20th anniversary with the school on Saturday.
And the timing of this is just very ironic, but I do believe we have a piece of video that shows that vote taking place.
I appreciate Tom for what he's done for this university, for this community, for the athletics, and for the academic side of the university. I think that he is owed some thanks for those things that he's done. And I hope that we as a board, if we do proceed with this vote, which I am not in favor of as well, that I hope that we can somehow relay that to Mr. Jurich.
I feel like that the value of my diploma has increased because of what's gone on with the athletics. It hasn't been without some ups and downs, and I'm a person that feels like a lot of those ups and downs should be talked through and worked through. So I'm with Brian and Ron. I do not support this motion.
You know, when I look at this, like we approach questions, what's in the best interest of the university? That's not where I come out on it. I mean, I look at the history, having lived here in Louisville, of what the athletic facilities have done over the last 20 years. Getting in the ACC, it's kind of unbelievable to me that the university's been transformed in that manner. That doesn't mean that everything is perfect in athletics. There are major issues in basketball. We all know that. But here, as a board of trustee member of a public university, I look at all those things, and on balance, I don't favor doing this.
Those were the 3 no votes. You heard Ronald Wright talking first. Diane Medley, who actually ran the trustees for a short time. She was put into, remember the interim of the interims when in between when Matt Bevin was blowing up the board. And that's Brian Cromer, who was speaking at the end there. Those were the 3 that voted no. Again, 10 voted yes to remove Tom Jurich.
Yeah, absolutely. All of them saying, pump the brakes. Let's revisit this. Let's think about this a little bit longer and have some more debate while we wait for some of these facts to play out.
And our team covering this, Robert Bradfield, Derek Rose, out there all day long. Let's go to them live to get more reaction. Hello, guys.
Hey there, Doug and Kayla. Certainly has been a flurry of activity within the last hour here. Still trying to digest a lot of this information here on the campus of U of L. We're going to send things back to you and join you during our 6 o'clock newscast.
All right, thank you both. But again, as we reported last night at 11, Tom Jurich was told last night in the evening hours that he would be fired. That was our lead story at 11 o'clock. It played out exactly like we were told by a source, and that leads me to believe that David Grissom had those votes buttoned up. He knew what he was going into today, and that's why the attorneys were only allowed 9 minutes in the room, and then they were gone.
Yep, they seem very prepared to make this exact decision today.
That's right.
All right, well, we'll be right back on the other side of this break. And thanks for sticking with us at 5:30. Our coverage continues. The U of L Board of Trustees voted this afternoon 10-3 to fire Athletics Director Tom Jurich. This, of course, comes after an FBI investigation was unveiled. And it has been a roller coaster of a day so far, Doug.
That's right. One of the yes votes, Papa John Schneider. The firing happened just after 4:30 this afternoon. And joining us live is Bob Valvano of ESPN 680. You hear him on the Cardinal radio broadcast. Bob, you've been very open and honest that you had a strained relationship with Tom Jurich, but you're raising some serious questions here about what the attorneys are saying. And what do you think about this move that happened this afternoon to get rid of him after 20 years?
The thing I'm shocked about is, I mean, they must have been able to at least read the landscape. They even alluded to how many notes they got. There was huge support for Tom from certain factions and from boosters and fans. I did 5 hours on the radio today, which was rather exhausting. People almost crying on the air, but their emotions about it. And then they come out and say they're firing him with cause and don't tell us what the cause is. So like the lawyers say today that they fired him based on inaccurate information. How can we respond to that? We don't know what the information is. They said they're firing him for cause and then did not give us any indication for what that cause is. So it's very difficult to respond to the lawyers, and it's really surprising knowing the emotion. You can't have this kind of an emotional investment in this from the public and then leave them with that we're just going to terminate him and we're not going to tell you why. That's tough.
Well, let's talk about that emotional investment and also the huge support, as you said, for Tom Jurich. What is the backlash going to be for not listening to these supporters?
Of your 5 hours of calls,
well,
how many of them were in disbelief that he was gone?
It was both ways. I mean, because the fact of the matter is, as you probably know, Rick Pitino was just subpoenaed today. That FBI thing is still ongoing, and I've had people call and correctly say, well, suppose they said, okay, we're bringing Tom back, and then this thing goes forward and it has tentacles that we haven't seen yet. They would put themselves in a very, very difficult position, and that's, I mean, I'm not advocating that's going to happen or not happen, but I think it's a lot more, You know what, Doug, and Kayla, what I was struck by is it's not an either or. In other words, there were people calling and saying, hey, we get it. The guy did so many great things. But it's not like the people were calling and telling us the great things he did as if the people who said, well, we need to make a change didn't see that. They understood that, but they said times change and maybe it's time for a new direction.
So let's just put it all into perspective about what overall is driving the decision on this. Because you're right, there were people in this town who didn't believe up till 1 o'clock that Jurich would be fired, even though the reports had been out there and the tone from U of L had been set weeks in advance. Is the overall mission by David Grissom and Greg Postal, we've got to start fresh. We've got too many fires burning on the Belknap campus.
I think that's a large part of it. I really do. And I think nationally that's the message they're trying to send, which is, you know, that I know people around who don't like to hear it, and I don't like to say it, but it's been a bit of a laughingstock around the country. That's what I'm not advocating it should be, but I talk to my national colleagues and they say, what is going on there? It's just been a mess. I think the message they're trying to send is we have to go in a new direction. They have to develop a new working relationship between one side of the campus and the athletic side, and this is their opportunity to do it. But I think it's really telling that Vince Tyra came out and said, hey, this does not mean we're de-emphasizing athletics. He was adamant about that and said that very quickly. And I think I know him well enough to know he's very sincere about that.
You know, we talked about having to unify the athletic department. We know that there are at least 15 coaches that came out in support of Tom Jurich heading into today. What's it going to take to unify that athletic department moving forward? Can it be done? How long will it take?
I don't think it's going to be a problem at all. And when I say that, that doesn't mean they weren't sincere in their absolute support of Tom. But I know a lot of these coaches. They are dedicated to their student athletes, to their teams. I think they're sad that Tom is going to be moving on, but I think, and Vince Tyra talked about that too, he's met with almost all of them, and they are ready to go forward and try and have great seasons, and I don't think there's any insincerity about that. These are really good coaches with a really great commitment level. I don't think that's going to change.
His daughter works for Adidas, based there out at U of L. His son still employed. We checked today. It did involve Mark Jurich today in the action. Do you think he stays? Is it an awkward situation out there? I mean, you know the inner workings of that department.
It's difficult to say, but I mean, I know he and Vince have had a relationship, so if he thinks it's comfortable enough for him to stay, I know that Mark is perceived as a very talented young administrator, and so I don't think there's any urge to push him out. The question is, would he be comfortable staying? And I don't know Mark well enough to answer that, but I don't see any groundswell to push him out.
How influential was John Schneider in all this overall?
His name's on the stadium, dude. I mean, it says something, doesn't it?
That's why we have you in here. It's right between the eyes, Bob Valvano.
You know, we talk about this cause and not knowing what that cause is. Well, in that statement, it said that Jurich has done nothing illegal nor violated any NCAA rules. You know, is his biggest crime, so to speak, supporting Pitino?
I don't know if it's supporting Pitino.
Refusing the firing.
Well, that's what one report said, but you know that others have denied. He was never asked to fire Pitino, so we don't know. The only thing I can say is, if you're going to look at it consistently, there's a difference between responsibility and culpability. And they said that Rick Pitino, even if he didn't know this stuff went on, is responsible for his program. Well, by that same criteria, you could say that about Tom. Nobody's suggesting he's culpable for any of this. But under his watch, there's been a number of scandals that have gone on with basketball and other things, and that may be what they're talking about.
As we wrap this up, one thing that struck me from, I mean, I covered his arrival when Harry Jones flew him in on a private jet 20 years ago out there, and he didn't even think he wanted to come to Louisville. Nobody was out there but a couple of reporters. He had to be convinced to come here. His penchant, his ability to give second chances, was that a downfall, or is that a great ability to do so and look the other way? Because he sure did, and every time he'd come out and do a news conference, it seemed like it really was on his sleeve. It really took something out of him every time he'd give that second chance.
I'm not being coy when I say the answers are yes and yes. I mean, it is one of his great strengths that, you know, and that's why the coaches are so loyal to him. Having said that, at some point, you know, it may turn out to be counterproductive, and this could be one of those times that, who knows, people have said if he had just fired Rick Pitino after the Katina Powell thing, maybe this doesn't happen. I don't know, maybe it doesn't. That may be a legitimate take, but, you know, that's not unusual, right? How many people have you seen sometimes their greatest strength is also what makes them the most vulnerable? That's not, he wouldn't be unique in that regard.
Thanks for your time, Bob. Bob Valvano, ESPN 680 every day from noon to 3.
Noon till 3, or on days like this till 5.
That's right. All right, thanks.
All right, thanks so much. We'll be right back. In case you missed it last night on 11 at 11, the city of Lexington has moved 2 Confederate statues from downtown. Attorney General Andy Beshear said yesterday the State Military Heritage Commission did not have to give the final okay, so the removal process began at sundown. The John C. Breckinridge statue was taken away first, then John Hunt Morgan. A small crowd of onlookers watched and cheered, saying this is what happens when the power of people stand together. We have no reports of any trouble or protest during the removal. The statues were moved to a storage facility while the city waits on a final agreement with the Lexington Cemetery.
In fact, the last one was removed during the 11 o'clock news, very late. We also want to take a moment here to say another big thank you to all of you, our viewers who took part last night on these newscasts to help the Chuck Olmstead Memorial Fund in its 8th year now. We collected $2,500 during last night's telethon, which ran from 4 to 6:30. 100% of that money will go toward funding brain screenings for aneurysms. As you'll know, our beloved former friend, former reporter Chuck Olmstead was just 60 years old when he died from a sudden brain aneurysm in March of 2009. Now, his wife, Candy, created this memorial in Chuck's honor to pay for others to get preventative screenings. And it's going to happen again, thanks to you. The next free scan is this Sunday, October 22nd, from 10 until 3. At the fairgrounds, the Harold Workman North Wing, the Hall B there, again at the fairgrounds, the Expo Center. Space is limited and online pre-registration is required. We've got the information you need to pre-register at WHAS11.com, and we can't say it enough. Thank you to everyone for helping us yesterday.
A new medical study aims to open eyes and save lives. Those findings coming up next.
Next, it is The Rant. Your calls and emails about all U of L and the scene today on the campus as Tom Jurich is fired. 855-749-1101. Your reaction is welcome.
Another beautiful day around here, as you know. Some more nice weather is coming, but it won't last forever. We'll talk about some big weather changes for next week. All coming up.
Tonight here on The Rant, now your reaction coming in to the day-long process of firing Tom Jurich. We're getting a lot of calls from folks lately down in Campbellsville and Breckinridge County, Kentucky. Thank you.
Well, a beautiful day out there today. Now, those nights are getting a little bit chilly. Have you guys turned on your heat yet?
Oh, yeah. No.
I haven't either.
I got to see the first snow flurries, right, Jared?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Wake up in the morning, it's like 67 degrees. We got to crank that up to about 70.
Mr. Florida.
Yes.
I hear the violin playing from Mr.
Oh,
Florida.
my gosh.
Yeah, the sad song that summer's over and it's going to be in the 50s next week. Yes. That's what I'm thinking. For the big football games coming up this weekend, they're all away, it looks like.
Thank you. A blood pressure check is part of the routine when going to the doctor's office. Yet despite strong public health warnings of the deadly effects of high blood pressure like heart attack or stroke, a new report shows half of Americans with the condition do not have it under control. CDC researchers found that among adults with high blood pressure, only about half have it controlled. Doctors advise everyone to know your blood pressure and take medicine if it's prescribed before it's too late. Well, it's the latest animal stunt that has the internet going wild. A chicken in the Florida Keys apparently taking a liking for paddleboarding. That video straight ahead.
2 days after firing its head basketball coach, U of L at it again. Voting late today after 4:30 this afternoon to fire the athletic director, Tom Jurich. We have live team coverage reaction coming up from the school's interim president and the acting AD, Vince Tyree. It's next at 6.
Apparently, animals can have a lot of the same fun as people, but don't take it from me. If you need some hard evidence, look no further than this paddleboarding chicken. This is Loretta, a 1-year-old Rhode Island red chicken that lives in the Florida Keys. What a life, right? Well, her owner, Carly, says she loves to go with her on paddleboarding trips, but only for so long. After a couple hours, she's ready to call it quits and go to bed. Can you blame her? Well, thanks for watching WHAS 11 at 5 and 5:30. Your top stories continue right now at 6 with Doug.
On your side, this is WHAS.